Jeff Smith. Many ex-Sea Org, including yourself, have said they went with very little sleep for years. How much did you actually get per week and night? I have read that without proper sleep, the brain begins to shut down. People will hallucinate, make mistakes, go crazy, and eventually die, not including how it lowers muscle matter and exposes you to the chance of getting sick, so it amazes me more Sea Org members don't drop dead from lack of rest. The lack of sleep situation in the Sea Org came in fits and starts. It came in waves. It wasn't a consistent situation where you go in the Sea Org and suddenly you're only getting 3 hours sleep a night, every night, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's not like that. It's that I've talked in the past about how when I was in management and how being in the Sea organization, the schedule was pretty wild because there were lots and lots of emergencies being thrown at us. But it wasn't like we were always under a state of emergency or a condition of emergency. There were times when things did kind of chill for a little while. And by a little while, I mean, maybe a couple weeks or something like that, right? It's easy for this to be misinterpreted as you're only getting 2 hours sleep a night or something like all the time. And of course, if that were to happen, everybody would go kind of crazy. And in fact, there was one period of time where it was like that. But first, let me just say, on a regular routine basis, I was getting as a Sea Org member probably an average of about 6 hours sleep a night. There were times when I got 8 hours. There were times, because in order to be sessionable, in order to go into auditing sessions in Scientology, you have to be well rested. It's a big thing in Scientology. Now you'd think, because of that, that we would all want to be sessionable all the time, so we could always go in session or potentially go in session, and so we'd always be getting 8 hours sleep a night. But no. It was only for the Sea Org members that me and other people that I knew, it was only when you had to be sessionable the next day that you would, that people would be conscientious about trying to get more sleep. The emergencies would come fast and furious, and when they came, you could get 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours sleep that night. You might be up till 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning or something, doing something, and then, you get your 3 or 4 hours and or 5 hours, and you get up the next day and you're kind of bleary-eyed, and you go to work, and maybe that night the emergency is starting to be contained a little bit, and so then that next night you're getting like 6 hours of sleep or something, or whatever. It just came and went. There were times when there was one particular period for a week when we had to man up personnel into ASHO, the American Saint Hill organization, which is one of the blue buildings on L. Ron Hubbard Way. It was being renovated, and we needed to man it up, and it's a Sea Org organization, so it had to be Sea Org members. And there was this huge, we called them evolutions. I don't know where that word comes from, but we called them evolutions, a progressive series of events in order to get something done. I guess that's what it means. I'm sort of making that up. But we had this evolution hit us, where we had to man up ASHO, and we had to do it now. So this happened about the first year or two that I was in the Sea Org. And everybody in management was up 24/7, going through personnel files and records and trying to find people that could be spared or ripped off or whatever to throw into ASHO. And we had to man this thing up fully. Like, we had to throw 100 or 200 people in there. So we were scouring the base, and then we were given records of people from, even higher organizations, which was unheard of. And so the sleep situation that week was pretty dire. I literally, over a period of 5 days, from a Sunday night or a Saturday or Sunday until Thursday that week, I got about 3 hours of sleep. Everybody was suffering during that evolution. There was, to the point where the CMO messengers were coming around with vitamin shots, and I mean literally, like with needles, giving people vitamin shots of B complex or something like that was supposed to help pump them up or something, right? It had gone that crazy. It was the first and only time that I've ever drank espresso because I was so desperate. I'm not a coffee drinker. I hate coffee. So I was one of those rare Sea Org members, didn't drink coffee, didn't smoke a lot. So I was so desperate, though, after 2 days of this, that I went to the canteen and I got espresso shots and I tried mixing it with chocolate milk. Oh, oh awful. But it did give me a little boost. So that was a very, intense 5 days where we were trying to get this thing done. And then after 5 days, and everybody's just bleary-eyed and practically dead, and and somehow we threw some people in there, and then it stopped, and then somebody else came down with a more rational solution to get recruitment going, and the time frame was extended because we were given a time frame of like days. And and that's the sort of thing that would happen is these things would come down, from on high with these crazy orders to get something done in an incredibly short period of time, and everybody would go and try to get it done. It wouldn't get done almost every time because the orders were so madhouse crazy, but we would try, and then seeing that it wasn't going to get done, or some other executive would change his mind, or whatever would happen. I'm not privy to it. I don't know what the hell happened. But whatever happened, the order would change. And then suddenly we were off the hook. We had more time. Things chilled. And after years of this, it started to become a thing for me that I would see these crazy orders come down, and I'd just roll my eyes and go, okay, well, we're going to have to all go crazy for a few days. But then it'll probably chill out, and, because we're going to get done as much as we can get done. And I sort of resolved it and justified it in my mind that this intense pressure was coming down in order to try to get us moving things forward, move the ball down the road faster, even though they knew and we all knew that these orders were crazy, right? They were just wackadoodle. And that was the only way I could sort of rationalize it in my mind as to how did I live in this crazy world. As far as the other time I was thinking about that things got really crazy on sleep for an extended period of time was actually a period of time when I was on the RPF. And when you're on the RPF, one thing you can say about being on the RPF is you get sleep, okay? You might not, at least most of the time. These kind of crazy evolution things would happen on the RPF just like they happen elsewhere in the Sea Org. But for the most part, when I was in the Sea Org on the RPF, it was 6 to 7 hours a night, which was kind of luxury because you had to go in session or had to be sessionable and ready to go in session every single day. That was the only way you were ever going to get off the RPF. So sleep was kind of a thing, and you were given just enough time, and you learned very quickly when you got on the RPF that when your head hit the pillow, you needed to be asleep. Like, you went to sleep. There was no laying around in bed sort of thing. Like, you learned how to do that. So it was just barely enough time to get your body rested enough to be able to go into session. But while I was on the RPF, the basics came out. And this was this new series of books that Miscavige had revised and released. And I think this was in 2006 or 7 or something. And when these books came out, there was this massive order and push to sell them all. And you guys have heard about this, and this is with the call centers and the people and the crazy discipline and that sort of thing. But for months and months, people were not getting sleep. Like, they were getting 3 to 4 hours a night. And my wife at the time had to go through this. And I heard about it after I got off the RPF. We saw and heard some bits and pieces, when we were in our little sequestered area of the RPF, because we didn't interact with the rest of the Sea Org crew. When you're on the RPF, you're sequestered away. But we had heard bits and pieces, and we all looked at each other and was like, wow, like, thank God we're on the RPF. I mean, it was like that crazy. And because believe me, the RPF was the most abusive environment I have ever been in. But this basics thing was even worse for a short period of time. And when I graduated the RPF and I finished it and I got to talk to my wife again, she was telling me, I mean, there were people taking off in the middle of the night all the time, like just mass exodus of Sea Org members taking off, at blowing, just leaving because they couldn't deal with the schedule and the pressure and the intense sales demand, because every single Sea Org member had to sell, right? And they were up until 4 or 5 in the morning, sometimes not even going to bed at all, just because the sales pressure was so crazy. And this was really taking a toll. I mean, there were Sea Org members who were not just taking off, but there were others. You could see the dark circles. I mean, the public were starting to talk about it, right? And the executives who were having to run this craziness themselves weren't getting sleep. They were looking like zombies. And it was just kind of this period of mass hysteria on the base. And finally, after I got off the RPF, and like shortly after I got off the RPF, after months and months of this, the orders started coming down to, to kind of slack off a little bit. Not slack off, that's the wrong term to use, but the pressure let up a little bit. And people started getting a bit more sleep because the executives, like everybody was just, this is insane, what's going on, and it just couldn't be dealt with anymore because the kind of things you're talking about were starting to happen. People were starting to get sick and develop body problems and stuff because of this long-term sleep deprivation. So that was the longest period of time that I saw or heard of anything like that, and I think I've given you a general idea of how it is in the Sea Org with that.